Hello and welcome to Mike Drops the Mic. I'm Mike Lineman. Today, I'm joined by Andy Sherrell. Andy currently is the Director of Maritime Operations for Ocean Infinity. He's gone on many different ocean wreckage sites to view things such as the Titanic, do research, look for the Malaysian plane, all kinds of exciting stuff. So not only is he joining us today, but I'm happy to say that he is also my cousin's husband. So we have a little bit of a family connection there as well. So Andy, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. So I wanted to start off that you went to Florida Institute of Technology for college, and after graduating, you worked for almost 12 years as a project manager and senior engineer for Oceaneering. So, what were your responsibilities when you were working there at Oceaneering?
Oceaneering, I kind of fell into the position there after I graduated with an engineering degree as a engineer and a project manager that assisted in their Navy contract at the time, which they held a long-term contract with the Navy to basically do search and salvage for anything the Navy was looking for, and that included not only lost fighter jets and helicopters, but also commercial airline disasters or like flights like TWA 800 that crashed into the ocean off New York, or Swiss Air Flight 111, Egypt Air. There was a lot of plane crashes. Yeah, right when I started working for them, actually, commercial airline crashes that I just got inundated with doing that kind of work with them for the Navy. So it was a challenging time, but there was a lot of interesting and rewarding projects for me to be involved with.
And you're talking about challenging and rewarding processes that you were involved with. What were some of your most memorable specific experiences when you were working there?
Mm, gosh, with those specifically with the commercial airline crashes, it's a lot of times we would be there shortly after the airplanes crash, so we'd be looking for the black boxes, and which are really important to find and find quickly, um, and just find the general area where the plane crash occurred, and find the wreckage underwater, and try to find survivors if there are any. Typically, by the time we get all our equipment mobilized, which we do all the underwater search and salvage operations, so. A lot of times that's more of a recovery operation at that point. So, just being part of helping find closure for the families that lost loved ones, and being able to try to find the solution, help the safety investigators find out what happened in those aircraft disasters. Like that's really rewarding for me. It's really, just to be a part of trying to help solve what happened, and again try to bring a little bit of closure for families, that,
Sure.
so.
Now, you mentioned the black box whenever you're starting. So essentially what you're doing is you're looking for the wreckages of these planes, commercial airlines, or other things that have crashed in the ocean, and it's your job to try to locate them.
Mhm.
Now, when you talk about the black box, what exactly is that? How do you start the process of trying to find a commercial airline that crashed? Obviously, you can, majority of the time talk to the plane and have a general search radius for where it might be. But how do you narrow down that radius and try to pinpoint a more accurate place?
Yeah, so that oftentimes, like you said, you do have the radar positioning from where it crashed, but underwater, it's really hard to see long distances. So it's like searching with a flashlight in a dark room, so you can only see this small little area right in front of you. But the black boxes each have an acoustic beacon on them, and they are activated when they hit the seawater, and they'll send out an acoustic pulse every once per second. And they last for about 30 days once they get submerged. So you have a window there where you can find them and listen for them, and you can hear those from say a mile or 2 miles away in really good conditions, but typically about a mile. And So we would tow this underwater sonar that listens for that pulse in the general area. And then once you hear it, then you kind of hone in on it and get closer and closer to it. And then you can send our remotely operated vehicle down to actually with cameras and robotic arms to try to dig through the wreckage and find it. And that also has like a acoustic receiver on it, so it can hone in on that signal and find the black box. And then of course sometimes the beacons break off, so you find the beacon but not the black box, and but they're bright orange colored, so you just kind of do a visual search, and typically we find them after a few days. Depends on the search area. So.
That sounds so challenging, especially considering, if a plane or something crashes, it's not like it stays right where it crashed. It's going to separate, and I'm assuming the water carries it out and spreads. It's got to be so challenging trying to find it, especially like you talked about. It's like a flashlight in the dark. Man, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Now, another thing that I know that you've done is you've gone to the Titanic. And you've gone to the wreckage site of the Titanic. What was your purpose going there?
So we went to the expedition that I went on for the Titanic was in 2010, and our goal was to work with RMS Titanic, who owns the salvage rights for the Titanic, and we worked with NOAA and the National Park Service to actually create the first high resolution sonar mosaic map of the Titanic wreck site. So we took an autonomous underwater vehicle there, an AUV, which essentially would dive down and make sonar maps of the area in really high resolution and detail. And we wanted to map the entire extent of the debris field as well. So we went really far out from it, I think around 3 to 4 miles on each side.
Wow.
And mapped to try to encompass the entire debris field and see if anything was out there that hadn't been seen before. And then we had ROVs on board as well that went down and took video and investigated the wreck site in more detail. Created the first 3D, maybe not the first, but one of the most highly detailed 3D video mosaics of the wreckage as well. So.
And when you're talking about going to the wreckage and seeing if you can find something there that hasn't been seen before, when you went in 2010. Did you find anything new or different that you weren't expecting to find at the site of the Titanic?
I think what we found was we found some pieces that were in the outer area of the field that hadn't been found before. But one of the biggest things that we noticed was when we created the sonar map, we were able to see these sediment waves that were created from the stern right before it impacted that showed it was swirling. So you could see like you can see an impact crater when something that heavy falls through the ocean and it hits the seabed, maybe like at 20 or 30 miles an hour. The bow of the Titanic hit the seabed, and as you can imagine, all that sediment just gets pushed upwards and creates this kind of mounds on the exterior. And on the stern, you could see how it was a sweeping motion. And it looked like it was swinging around right before it hit. So it provided insight into that. It just provided kind of details to people on how it sank and the orientation of when it landed. And it gave you this great bird's eye view of the entire wreck site, so you could really kind of help understand how everything was laid out and where everything was in relation to each other. Better than previous before. So, but that was really neat project. It was highlighted in the National Geographic magazine, and I worked on the sonar mosaic map that was in the centerfold of it. So that was a really neat experience for me.
That's so cool. And knowing that when you were assigned in 2010 to go to the famous wreckage site of the Titanic, what emotions did you feel? What was it like realizing that, oh my gosh, this is one of the most famous, disasters in American history, that, the Titanic, everybody's heard about it. And were you excited, nervous? What were you feeling?
I was excited to be a part of it. I was excited to be selected as part of the crew, and I had friends that had gone out on previous expeditions, and it just didn't work out for me to go on some of the previous ones. So I was really excited that this time it was going to happen, and the project that we were doing was really neat and fascinating, I thought. And I remember when we first got out there, it was really kind of surreal because you get out and you're in the middle of nowhere in the North Atlantic, and it's 2 days away and from land, and we get out there and stop over the site, and we had a little ceremony and threw some flowers in the water, and a couple people spoke, and it was really a somber kind of moment when you realize that really it's like a massive grave site,
Yeah.
and we were there to just really recognize that, and to help tell the story again, and keep it alive in the history books, really, and just add to it. So yeah, it was really fascinating, really great project. I was really happy to be involved with it.
Yeah. I can't imagine. That sounds like such an incredible experience. Now, on March 8th, 2014, flight MH370, which is the Malaysian plane, it was lost. It crashed into the ocean. And then you ended up being someone who went searching for the plane. How did you get involved with that?
I got involved. I've been working on previous projects like that before. I'd worked on the Air France 447 flight that crashed off Brazil, flying to France, and in 2011, I think it was. And I worked with Woods Hole on that project as well. And the director of special projects at Woods Hole, Dave Gallo, he had been contacted by the Australian Transportation Safety Bureau, who was leading the search effort with Malaysia for MH370, and they needed someone with some technical expertise to help them with contracts and run the search essentially from a technical side. And he recommended me to their director. And literally one night I got called by him, and he asked if I could come out there for a couple of weeks and to meet the team and to help them with some initial stuff. And I agreed, and then I stayed on the project for 3 years. So yeah, it was really just.
My next question was going to be, you said 3 weeks, and I was going to ask you, you spent, from what I understand, a significant more amount of time, which was 3 years. So if you're looking for the Malaysian plane for 3 years, what does a typical day look like for you in those 3 years? How would you start the day? Like, take me through that process.
Yeah, so it was a really challenging project, really remote. Had several vessels involved doing the search operations, and so I was essentially a technical advisor and led the underwater search portion of that search. So I'd help them. I didn't dictate where we searched, but how we would search it, basically. So I would get vessel reports from all the different vessels operating each day, daily progress reports, and look through the data that they collected that day for any targets of interest, and then decide if we should go look at any of those targets that we found, that we thought might be the aircraft, and to do further investigations, balance the coverage on a daily basis, because it was a massive search area that we had. It was the biggest search in history that I know of, for especially in that deep of water. So yeah, it's just basically a lot of operational tasking every day, making sure things just keep moving forward. I go out on the vessels and do equipment checks, to verify systems. For the first part of that, I mainly worked on shore, and then would hire people to, go out on the boats to work with the teams that we contracted to do the search. And so it was a really challenging role, but it's really rewarding, other than the fact that we never found the aircraft. And that's still a project I'm working on with the company I work for now, where it's still I got involved with the company I work for now through that project. They went and actually did a search for another 5 months afterwards with their equipment. And I helped them out with that and got involved with them for that part of it. And now I work for them full time. So we're still, as a company and as a personal, on a personal note, I'm still very interested in searching for and finding that wreckage. It's a personal goal, I think, of mine to solve, help find that aircraft for sure.
And that's very respectable. And, this was a huge international case trying to find the Malaysian plane, which, as you said, has not been found yet. But you talked about how big of a search radius there was for it. Approximately how big was it? How many miles did you guys try to search?
Yeah, we searched about 35,000 square nautical miles, I think. So I want to say it's almost the size of Pennsylvania.
Wow.
We mapped, and that is in water depths of 12 to 14,000 feet, even.
Yeah.
On average. Some areas were down to almost 20,000 feet deep. So
That's unbelievable. Especially, I just can't stop thinking about the analogy, the flashlight in the closet. I mean, that has to be such a daunting, challenging task. But that's incredible. But it's something definitely to be proud of, to be assigned to search for something like that. That was such a big international headline story trying to find the Malaysian plane.
mhm.
So there's a lot of conspiracy theory people, and I'm not necessarily one of them, who are trying to figure out how the Malaysian plane did crash. There's been rumors about terrorists hijacking, North Korea, all kinds of different theories. Do you have any sort of thought about how the plane may have crashed in the manner that it did?
I don't want to speculate too much, but I think someone, I think it was flown intentionally and crashed.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I think someone did it on
Very-
purpose.
Man.
Yeah.
So,
So somebody with a lot of knowledge on how to fly the plane because of all the systems that they turned off and the maneuvers that they did, and to avoid detection for certain periods of time. They had to be well trained with the aircraft.
sure. So now that Malaysian plane incident has, you stepped a little bit away from it, but as you said, it's still a personal goal of yours to try to locate it. What else are you currently working on right now? Where are you at currently?
Right now, so I work with a company called Oceaneering. They own the largest fleet of underwater AUVs in the world. So that's been really fascinating for me to work with. They also are building a large fleet of unmanned surface vehicles, so robotic ships basically. And we're doing all kinds of different work, from oil and gas work to, we're doing a current project now where we're doing wind farm survey. So, as wind farms are being built off the east coast of the U.S. and elsewhere in the world, but specifically off the east coast of the U.S. is one I'm involved in. And before they're built, they have to do underwater mapping of the areas to see how the sediment is and shifting sands, and they do a lot of environmental studies as well. So we collect the data that can allow them to do a lot of those studies. And so that's been some of the more recent work I've been working on. And then we also got involved in looking for a shipwreck that was lost recently, a Korean shipwreck that sank unexpectedly in the middle of the ocean. We found that last year, and then we looked for an Argentinian sub a couple years ago that disappeared and sank and lost all the crew on board. So we found that after about 6 months looking. So that was a really rewarding project because it had been missing for over a year, and it was really difficult to find. But we were able to locate it. So at least again, the closure for the families to at least know where their loved ones are, because without knowing that, it's just like Malaysia Airlines. Like it's hard to accept the fact that someone died. I think if you don't know where they are,
Sure.
without the knowledge of the actual location, even if you can never go there, at least you know what's there. So
It's very respectable that, that closure aspect and talking to families and whatnot is such a big priority for you. I think that's wonderful. And, I have faith that you'll continue to do that and continue to do a wonderful job finding all these lost aircrafts and submarines and everything. Well, the last thing I want to do is every time I talk to someone, I do 7 quick questions. They're just short answer related to what we talked about, and then also not related to what we talked about. Is that okay with you?
sure.
All right. So you've traveled all over the world, obviously, and seen all kinds of amazing places. Where is your favorite country that you've visited?
Well, that's a tough question. Favorite country. I've gotten asked that before, and I always, it's difficult for me to answer because each one is so unique and special. But I think a big one for me was I went to Israel, and so many cultures there and so much history there. If you're religious or not religious, and so much turmoil there, and war and peace and love and not love. And yeah, I think that it's always been a fascinating place for me to visit.
Okay. And the next question I have is there a country you've wanted to visit that you have not visited yet, but you would like to?
I haven't been to New Zealand. I'd like to go there.
Okay. What is your favorite food?
Oh, it's probably pizza.
Pizza.
Pepperoni.
Pepperoni pizza. You can't go wrong with that.
Pretty American.
What about your favorite movie?
Oh, favorite movie. I really like the Bourne movies.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, or James Bond movies. Can't go wrong with those. But
Absolutely. If you could travel back in time to any historical event, where would you like to try to go and see? I wanted to ask this because in the back of my head, I was thinking Titanic or one of the maybe something like that. Not obviously be on it, but like be around that time era. Or what would interest you the most?
Good question. I don't know. Maybe dinosaurs.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. And also, you helped develop at Disney World. Correct me if I'm wrong. The one, what is it called? Dinosaur? Is it just called Dinosaur?
Disney World.
It's an animal kingdom, right?
Oh,
The dinosaur ride where you're in the Jeep and they take the picture of you at the end.
oh, the Jurassic Park one.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh, it was I did do a little bit of work on that. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but we did the Spider-Man one and SeaWorld, the Shamu show. Yeah.
So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Just go on the ride a few times, just like you've been there.
Yeah, that's right.
What was your first job?
My first job ever.
Yes, ever.
My first job ever was working for DeKalb, the corn company. And when I was 14, I literally walked down the fields and I would have to weed in between the corn stalks or cut corn stalks out. And then we had to pollinate each plant because they were testing different seed stocks to see which one grew the best. So
Yeah,
working in the cornfields. Yeah.
interesting. And the last question I have, we talked a little bit about Titanic and we talked about the different things you were trying to find and map out and whatnot at the Titanic. Was there an item that was the most fascinating thing you've seen at the Titanic? I know I've seen pictures of, silverware and tables and different furniture there. Was there anything that stuck out to you that was very fascinating to see, in person there?
I think probably that's the porcelain, like the tubs the bathtubs because they're just like perfectly white, surrounded by all this rusting metal. And the contrast is just amazing.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Either that, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me very much. It was fun learning about Titanic, Malaysian Plane, everything you do. So thank you very much, Andy. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or we good?
It's my pleasure to talk about it. It's fun. It's always fun to talk about that stuff. So
Awesome.
happy to share the stories.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andy. Have a good one.
You're welcome. Thanks. You too.